4 or 5 months ago, I was reading through Luke, and I read a verse here or two there, and for some reason or another, that stayed in my mind, and it stayed in my mind for weeks, and I'd read it over and over, and then I got to reading in depth and going back and forth. But today I'm going to be reading from Luke 14, verses 15 through 24, 25, and I'm going to be jumping around a whole lot. You may not want to go back and forth with me everywhere, but Luke chapter 14, verses 15 through 24. But after Eric asked me, I went and asked David. Of course, David's my pastor, and a lot of things you don't want to do without asking your pastor about it, because I represent him. And I feel as Eric is one of my pastors too, so I feel the same way about him. There's lots of stuff I wouldn't do unless I approached those men and asked them, and Dave said, well, yeah, go ahead, it'll be good for you. So, maybe there'll be a growing experience, and I just pray that the Lord will, I've been asking him for the last few days in between bouts with my stomach, to stand with me, and, maybe it'll help somebody, man. But Luke chapter 14, I'm going to start in verse 15. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to read all the verses, and then I'm going to go back. And when one of them that sat at meat with him heard these things, he said unto him, Blessed is he that shall eat bread in the kingdom of God. Then said he unto him, A certain man made a great supper, and bade many, and sent his servant at supper time to say to them that were bidden, Come, for all things are now ready. And they all, with one consent, began to make excuse. The first said unto him, I have bought a piece of ground, and I must needs go and see it. I pray thee, have me excused. And another said, I have bought 5 yoke of oxen, and I go to prove them. I pray thee, have me excused. And another said, I have married a wife, and therefore I cannot come. So that servant came and shewed his lord these things. Then the master of the house, being angry, said to his servant, Go out quickly into the streets and lanes of the city, and bring in hither the poor, and the maimed, and the halt, and the blind. And the servant said, Lord, it is done as thou hast commanded, and yet there is room. And the Lord said unto the servant, Go out into the highways and the hedges, and compel them to come in, that my house may be filled. For I say unto you, that none of those men which were bidden shall taste of my supper. Now that's going to be the extent of the verses I'm going to work through today. But I got to reading, and I probably read this 50 or 60 times in the last few months, just over and over and slow. But I got to going back and breaking this down, and I've said before that I'm not a college educated man or anything like that. Did graduate high school, but until you get in a dictionary, I didn't really know how unlearned I was until I start breaking stuff down. You get in a dictionary. But, back in verse 16, a certain man made a great supper unto the bed, and bade many. And I got to thinking about supper. In the supper time, it's, if you look that up, it's the evening meal. It's the last meal of the day. If you think about it, after your day's work is over, your journey's over, you come home, it's time to rest, you have supper, your work's just about through when it's supper time. It's just about the end of that day, And this was the great supper, that this man had prepared, which indicates that the journey and the work is just about over. And he sent his servant at supper time to say unto them that were bidden, Come, for all things are now ready. And if you look at that, something that is ready, if you look up ready, it means it's prepared for use and action. It's ready to be used, more or less. A table is set. It's time to, it's time to use what has been prepared. Now in John 14, like I said, you don't have to turn there. John 14, verse 1 through 3, like I said now, if something's ready, it's prepared. It's ready for use or action. John chapter 14, verse 1. Let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. So, it's the end of the day, it's evening. Our place of rest has been prepared. He wants you to know that there is a place for us. Once this work is over and this day, and we've sat down to the Last Supper and the journey is over, there's a place prepared for us to rest. John chapter 14, verse 2 and 3. That's what I just read. Chapter 20. So, and he sent his servant at supper time to say to them that were bidden, come, for all things are now ready. So, it's the end of the day. There's a place prepared for us. And I'm going to skip over 18 and 19 or 20 and get on down to 21. And I'll come back to 18, 19, and 20. So that servant came and showed the Lord these things, that when the master of the house, being angry, said to his servant. Now here's for lack of better words, the meat of what I want to talk about today. Then the master of the house, being angry, said to the servant, go out quickly into the streets and lanes of the city. And now, I got to looking at go out and quickly. John chapter 20, verse 21. Christ said to his disciples in 20:21, then said Jesus to them again, peace be unto you. As my Father has sent me, even so I send you. So here it is. The table's prepared. The day's work is done. Like I said, the place is prepared. Now Christ is sending us. He's sending us out. And he told us to go. He told the servants to go quickly. And that was real interesting when I got to looking at quickly and what quickly really meant. There's three things that quickly means. It means prompt, ready, or quick is what quickly means. Of course, quick you would think. And again, like I said, when you break this down, but I got to reading on that and applying this to the thing. And prompt suggests that the ability to respond quickly is the product of training or discipline. Ready suggests ease, smoothness in response. Quick stresses that the response is immediate. And now here's the interesting part. And often suggests that the ability is part of one's nature. So what he has told the servants here is to go quickly, to go in your nature. I'm sending you out. As my Father has sent you, I'm sending you. But I want you to go in a certain nature, the nature. So if you look at 2 Peter, like I said, I'm going to be jumping around a lot. Suggests that the ability is part of one's nature. 2 Peter, starting in verse 4, whereby are given unto us exceeding great and precious promises, that by these ye might be partakers of the divine nature, having escaped the corruption that is in the world through lust. Now, there's a few more verses there, but I'm going to stop right there. What I was wanting to look at was the nature, and it says here that you will be partakers of the nature. And to partake, if you partake of something, like I said, there's two or three different meanings, but one of them is to have the same qualities of something. So if you partake in Christ, you will have the qualities of Christ. You'll have the nature of Christ in you. So He sent the servants to go in the nature of Christ. To go quickly. So, So here it is. The supper is ready. The place is prepared. You know, the Lord has sent the servants. I want you to go in my nature, you know, and I want you to go into the streets and lanes of the city and bring in hither the poor and the maimed and the halt and the blind. Now, if you look at poor, like I said, there's several different meanings for all these. You know, poor is lacking of riches, worthy of pity. You know, if you're maimed, you're injured or disfigured, to do an injustice to cause pain or harm. If you're halt, you're lame, you limp, to move unsteadily. It also means to end of movement, to stop marching or journeying, to bring to a stop. You know, the Lord told them, said, go into the streets and lanes of the city and bring in hither the poor and the maimed and the halt and the blind. Now, if you look this, I mean, in the next verse there, you know, he talks about sending them into the highways and hedges. But I'd like to look at this for a minute. You know, all these, in my mind, are people that's probably looking for help, Linda. You know, if you're halt or maimed or you know, you're probably carrying a burden or a load, you're looking for help, you know. You know, and maimed, of course, now poor, like worthy of pity, maimed. You know, I got to thinking, Curtis McGee, he's got a real good message out. You know, I know, you know, I don't know how many of you heard it, but it says, "Help! I'm offended and I can't get up." You know, so if you're maimed, you know, there's probably many, you know, and even me, you know, there's been times, you know, that old flesh, it'll burden you down, and you know, and I just have to be honest, you know. Well, he didn't ask me to do this, or, you know, why didn't he let me do that? And, you know, by the grace of God, you know, I've had the ability to overcome that and keep flesh in subjection. But now, a lot of people, you know, they may let that burden them and hinder them, you know, and let their journey stop. You know, the halt and the lame, you know, is the end of movement, to stop marching. 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 20. You know, now again, to stop marching or journeying. 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 20. For if after they have escaped the pollutions of the world through the knowledge of the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, they are again entangled therein and overcome, the latter end is worse with them than the beginning. So, you know, I thought about that, and that's somebody that has stopped their journey. You know, they have come to a halt. You know, so, you know, they're in the streets and lanes of this world, and that's who the Lord has sent us after. You know, those are people that need help. And it may be, you know, you think about it, it may be as simple, well, I'm getting ahead of myself here a little bit. So, but now, you know, that's to be halt. You know, that's possibly a way of being halted. And then blind, you know, blind means several different things. It means sightless. It means lack of judgment, lack of understanding or no understanding. 2 Peter chapter 1, verse 9. You know, now I read a few minutes ago, I read this was, you know, as your nature. You know, verse 4 was the nature of Christ, you know. I'll read it again. Whereby are given unto us exceedingly great and precious promises, that by these ye might be partakers of the divine nature, having escaped the corruption that is in the world through lust. Now going right on down through there, you know, now we're looking at blind, sightless, lacking judgment, lacking understanding. Verse 9 of the same chapter, verse 9 of 1 Peter, 2 Peter chapter 1, verse 9. But he that lacketh these things is blind and cannot see afar off, and hath forgotten that he was purged from his old sins. So there's another one that's in the streets and the lanes that we've been sent, you know, to get. But now, reading right on through to that, go out quickly into the streets and lanes of the city, and bring in hither the poor and the maimed and the blind. And I looked up bring there, what bring, and again there's several different definitions and stuff. To cause to come with oneself by carrying or leading, so we can lead or carry the burdens of others and bring them. To cause to reach a certain state or take a certain action. Now, the thing I found most interesting about bring, we've been sent out with the nature of Christ to bring these people back. One example they give was to bring the light. Now, if you look up bring, if you take the definition of that, to bring the light, it's to make known or capable of being seen. So, by the nature of Christ, we're to go out into the streets and lanes and using the nature of Christ, make him capable of being seen. Now Matthew chapter 14, or chapter 5, verse 14. Now again, bring the light. Matthew chapter 5, verse 14, 15 and 16. And this is a very familiar scripture. It's quoted a lot, but now it just seems like all this just kept going. And the longer I looked at this, and that's one reason I kept turning to Eric. Well, I don't know, I'm not ready. But it just kept growing. It just got bigger and bigger and bigger. But verse 14, you are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hid. Neither do men light a candle and put it under a bushel, but on a candlestick, and it giveth light unto all that are in the house. So I'm going to drop back to Luke here before I get into verse 23. Go out quickly into the streets and lanes of the city, and bring in hither the poor and the maimed and the halt and the blind. And the servant said, Lord, it is done as thou hast commanded, and yet there is room. So they went out, and the servants have went out in the nature of Christ. They've let their light shine. The halt, the blind, the blind, the poor, they brought into the house. And then the Lord said unto the servant, Go out into the highways and the hedges, and compel them to come in, that my house may be filled. Now, I got to looking at that, and to compel something is to cause to do something by the use of physical, moral, or mental pressure. Now, my daughter, I'd like to see her come to church, but I can't physically make her. I can't go out and grab her and drag her to church. And I don't think the Lord wants us to play mental games with people. He wants us to use strong moral standards to be a light to the world, to bring the people in. That's how He wants us, in my heart, to compel people. But now if you look at the highway, He said, go into the highways and the hedges. A highway, I always thought I knew what a highway was, which, one definition is, it's a public road. Another one, and this was interesting, it's a main direct path is a highway. So it's the main path, it's where everybody travels, it's where the majority of the travel takes place. Matthew 7, verses 13 and 14, and I got to thinking about this. If you go out here on 75, there's a northbound lane and there's a southbound lane. You got two directions you can travel. Now you take that interstate, say it had no off ramps on it. Once you got on this road, there was no way to get off. You couldn't get off and take another direction. The only thing you could do was do a 180, and if you were heading north, you could turn and go south. Matthew 7:13. Enter ye in at the strait gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction, and many there be which go in thereat. Because strait is the gate, and narrow is the way, which leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it. Now I got to looking at that there. That's two directions. I mean, you actually, you look at this, you've got two choices. You either You're either going to go through wide as the gate or straight as the path. You got two choices, Madeline. You can't. There's only two ways to go. So then I got to looking at hedge. Like I said, I've read this and read this and read this. And again, I thought I knew what a hedge was. I'm 50 years old. I said, well, a hedge is a bush. Until I looked it up. And a hedge is a boundary formed by a dense row of shrubs or low trees. It's a barrier. It's a limit. So a hedge is a serious barrier. It's something that's hard to overcome. There are several places in the Bible, and one of them is everybody's familiar with. In Job chapter 1 verse 10, or I'm going to start with 9. Then Satan answered the Lord and said, Doth Job fear God for naught? Hast not thou built a hedge about him, and about his house, and about all that he hath on every side? Thou hast blessed the work of his hands, and his substance is increased in the land. So God had a hedge about Job that the devil couldn't even, God had to remove the hedge before the devil could even get to him. Isaiah chapter 5, verse 5. I didn't mark that one. And now go to, I will tell you what I will do to my vineyard. I will take away the hedge thereof, and it shall be eaten up, and break down the wall thereof, and it shall be trodden down. So there's again, there's a hedge that was meant to protect something, It can't be got to unless the hedge is removed. In Mark chapter 12 verse 1, a certain man planted a vineyard and set a hedge about it, and digged a place for the wine vat, and built a tower. I assume that's a guard tower so you can see what's going on. And lent it out to a husbandman, and went into a far country. So again, there's a hedge. It's mentioned several times in the Bible, but it's always for protection, and it's always something that's hard to overcome. And I got the hedges. I got on the internet, and I got to I Googled. You can Google about anything. But I Googled hedge rows, and one of the biggest things that come up was World War II was the Normandy hedge rows. And it said there that there was no better terrain in the world. Now, in the world, there was no better terrain in the world suited for defense than the hedge rows of Normandy, other than the coral of a beach. Of course, now the coral of a beach, you just can't get a ship to it, you can't get into it. But now, there was a whole lot there on about hedges, in even tanks. The tanks couldn't go through them. They were the landscape in Normandy. The fields are laid out, of course, in fields and stuff. And there's one way in, there's one way out. And to the American troops, it was a real hedge to overcome, because they'd use them for traps. They'd come through and they'd set up machine guns and stuff like that. But that was one of their biggest barriers, and it just goes to show, how big of a barrier a hedge is to overcome. But if you think, there's my daughter, of course now I was the same way for years. I had a hedge about my life, Madeline. I wouldn't let God in. It wasn't that I was a real bad person, Matt, but I wouldn't let him in. I wouldn't be where he wanted me to be until the sickness of my dad. And I still wouldn't let the hedge down. I still kept the barrier around me until he got my attention and put me in the hospital. He broke that hedge. That's what it took to break the hedge around my life, James. And no doubt there's people, that everybody in here's probably got loved ones and stuff. People build a hedge around their life. Of course, you've got people that's sick and hurt and maimed and blind and stuff like that. But you take, Sandy and I, we both had good jobs. I had money, had a nice home, I had my health. But I wouldn't let nothing into that. I protected that. I had a hedge built around that. And then it goes on to say, compel them to come in. And like I said, the way you compel is physical, moral, or mental pressure. Which, moral pressure is pretty much our preference, our choice. I don't think the Lord wants to go out and beat people over the head. But now, if you look at Galatians chapter 5, you want to compel by letting the fruits of the Spirit in your life lead you. And I'm going to read just a few extra verses here. It says, "For the flesh lusteth against the Spirit, and the Spirit against the flesh." Now, I thought this was real interesting here. "And these are contrary the one to the other, so that ye cannot do the things." These are contrary the one to the other, so that ye cannot do the things that ye would. "But if ye be led by the Spirit, ye are not under the law. Now the works of the flesh are manifest, which are these: adultery, fornication, uncleanness, lasciviousness, adultery, witchcraft, hatred, variance, emulations, wrath, strife, seditions, heresies, envyings, murders, drunkenness, revellings, and such like, of the which I tell you before, as I have also told you in time past, that they which do such things shall not inherit the kingdom of God." Now that's the works of the flesh. I wanted to read those. "But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. Against such there is no law. And they that are Christ are crucified the flesh with the affections and lust. If we live in the Spirit, let us also walk in the Spirit." 2 Corinthians. I'm lost now. So we're going to compel by using the fruits of the Spirit to shine in our life. 2 Corinthians 10. "For though we walk in the flesh, we do not war after the flesh. For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds." So there's the pulling down of the hedges. That's how we get through. "Casting down imaginations and every high thing that exalteth itself against the knowledge of God, and bringing into captivity everything to the obedience of Christ." So, we can get through the hedges. We can penetrate the hedges. Now the Spirit, the fruits of the Spirit, if we let those shine, a light on a hill cannot be hid, But now, 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 15. "But sanctify the Lord in your hearts, and be ready always to give an answer to every man that asketh you at reason for the hope that is in you with meekness and fear." If we do that, we can break down the hedges, that hinder us from doing God's work. We go with the nature of Christ, with love, meekness, patience, understanding. My daughter, like I said, I would love to see her here, but I don't pressure her much. "Tiffany, you want to go to church?" Maybe not every day, but all I can do is let her, see how I live and try to live Christ-like in my house is all I can do. But now here's an interesting thing that I thought was very interesting. The Lord told him to go quickly into the streets and the lanes of the city. Of course, you skip on down there, and the servant said, "Lord, it is done, as thou hast commanded, and yet there is room." Then the Lord said, "Go into the highways and the hedges, and compel them to come in." I thought it was interesting there that, the servant came back after the first time and said, "Lord, it is done." He didn't the second time. He didn't come back. When he told him to go into the highways and hedges, it doesn't say he came back. So I got to thinking about that. Matthew chapter 10. Chapter 10, verse 1. You can have the nature of Christ. And the last day or so I've been thinking a little more about this. You can walk in the light of Christ. You can walk in the Spirit. You can, of course, now David and our pastor and everybody's been telling us, and the Spirit's been warning the churches, except we seek low, there's always more. There's always more. There's more, Madeline. The Spirit of God, there's more to have. You can grow. For years I thought, well, I'll go to church, I'll pray, I'll get saved, you speak in tongues, get the Holy Ghost, that'll be the end of it. But, and again, the last day or two, I sort of added a little bit to this. But, to me, it goes right along with it, here we are, we went into the streets and lanes, and we've accomplished what the Lord wants us to do. We've brought them in. Now we're in the highways and the hedges. We're in the, I guess you could probably call it the front line. You're in the heat of the battle. You're in the ones that are not going to be easy to win. And when He had called unto Him His 12 disciples, He gave them power against unclean spirits to cast them out and to heal all manners of sickness and all manner of disease. Now if you jump over to chapter 7, or verse 7, and He said, As ye go, preach, saying, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Now I thought this was real interesting. Heal the sick, cleanse the lepers, raise the dead, cast out the devils. Freely you have received, freely give. Now in Mark chapter 9, here's the disciples. These are the individuals that walked with Christ. Eric, he told me, go. You can raise the dead, excuse me. You can heal lepers, you can overcome. But 9 verse 17, and in my mind, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I seen this as a hedge to the disciples. It is the reason I wanted to do this. And I'm going to read 7 or 8 verses here. It's Mark chapter 9, starting at verse 17. And one of the multitude answered and said, Master, I have brought unto thee my son, which hath a dumb spirit. And whosoever he taketh, and wheresoever he taketh him, he teareth him. And he foameth, and he gnasheth with his teeth, and pineth away. And I spake to thy disciples that they should cast him out. Now here's the interesting part. We just read there that He give them power over, to raise the dead, to heal lepers, and here's a boy, a young man with an evil spirit in him. And He said, And I spake to thy disciples that they should cast him out, and they could not. He answered him and said, O faithless generation, how long shall I be with you? How long shall I suffer you? Bring him unto me. And they brought him unto him, and when he saw him, straightway the spirit tare him. And he fell on the ground, and wallowed foaming. And he asked his father, How long is it ago since this came unto him? And he said, Of a child. And oft times it hath cast him into the fire and into the waters to destroy him. But if thou canst do anything, have compassion on us, and help us. And Jesus said unto him, If thou canst believe, all things are possible to him that believeth. And straightway the father of the child cried out and said with tears, Lord, I believe, help thou my unbelief. When Jesus saw that the people came running together, He rebuked the foul spirit, saying unto him, Thou dumb and deaf spirit, I charge thee, come out of him, and enter no more into him. And the spirit cried and rent him sore, and came out of him, and he was as one dead, insomuch that many said, He is dead. But Jesus took him by the hand, and lifted him up, and he arose. Now here's the interesting part. And when he was come into the house, His disciples asked Him privately, Why could not we cast him out? And this is the reason, or in my mind, there's always more. Here's men that are raising the dead, casting out devils, and he said unto them, this can come forth by nothing but prayer and fasting. So, when you think you've done all you can do, when you go into the highways and the hedges, I've been asking the Lord for conviction, and give me strength to stand, and there's always more I can do, Linda. It may take me a while to get there, Matt, but, no doubt, and I don't know this, but just in my mind, as those disciples walked those streets and my mind works pretty funny, but if I walked out this door here, Matt's laying out there and he's been hit by a car and fell over dead, I have enough faith to reach down and touch you and raise him from the dead. You know what the old flesh is going to do. The old flesh, boy, you're going to want to puff up. I'm where I need to be. But now, according to this, there's more. According to this, there's more you can have. Now, you think about raising the dead, healing the leopard, a broke arm. Tom Alexander there, we've prayed for him. If he come up in front of this pulpit and we prayed for him, and that man dropped his walker and his feet grew back and his finger grew back, there's more we can do. We can do more than that. But now John chapter 15 verse 7, I'm about to finish up here. There we had, the disciples. He gave them power to raise the dead, heal the sick. And then they come on a little lunatic that they can't do anything with. Christ says, but through prayer and fasting, but through paying the price. But chapter 15 verse 7, now here, if you really, and David, I've heard him say this here several times here lately. John chapter 15 verse 7, if you abide in me and my words abide in you, you shall ask what you will and it shall be done unto you. That's, it's no wonder he talks about that a lot, because that's a big verse. That's a lot of, but I looked into abide, and to abide is to wait for, to bear patiently, to last, to endure. Now here's the one that really caught my attention. To live or continue in a place. Now to abide. To live or to continue in a place. To live in God's will. Now you think if you abide there and you live in God's will. One other verse here, like I said, I hope I haven't put you to sleep. It's not, I didn't get sick, didn't throw up. As a matter of fact, it's not been near as bad as I thought it would. Of course, now, if there was 200 sitting out there, it might be different. I told Eric when I done, Eric made a comment to me months ago, he said, when you get up to preach in front of a bunch of Ballards, you better have your stuff together, because now they're going to critique you. They're going to critique you without meaning to critique you. And I told Eric on the phone there last night, this congregation and Bethesda House of Mercy, no doubt there's anybody in this crowd, Linda, that can come and do this. Because now I love the people in these two churches. They've been good to me through the ordeal of my father and stuff. But I feel like you people are very knowledgeable, and doing this in front of you is like you preaching in front of the Ballards. I feel like you are very good men. But now there's one more verse, as far as a hedge. Proverbs 15 verse 9, and it says, the way of a slothful man is as a hedge of thorns. Not just a hedge, but a hedge of thorns. But the way of a righteous is made plain. Now, if you look up plain, I'm in the look up mode here lately. I want to look up everything. I looked up gold the other night. What does gold mean? But now plain, I was talking about the Normandy Hedge Rows a while ago. you know, being one of the best terrains in the world for defense. Now a plain is a broad area of level or rolling treeless country, a stretch of nearly level treeless country. It's a terrain suited for an easy journey. So, you know, I thank Eric for giving me the opportunity. You know, I thank God for putting me where I'm at. You know, thank y'all very much.